The Great Pyramid of Giza. It's supposedly the oldest pyramid in Egypt, yet it seems to be the most accurately and intricately built of all the pyramids. It's like this pyramid was built with great precision, and then they just got sloppy with the others. Or were the others were the others built sooner, and they refined their techniques on the Great Pyramid and finally got one really accurate and precise. Many people seem to think that the Great Pyramid, the most precisely built pyramid, is the oldest. But if the same people that built that one built the others, then why aren't the others built as accurately and precisely? Or was the Great Pyramid built by an even older generation of people, or tribe of people, or something, that built it and then left the area, or were demolished during war or something, and then hundreds of years later a new Egyptian people come along, happen to stumble across it, were amazed by it, and try to build replicas, but never succeeding to do quite as good of a job as the original. Many possibilities to ponder and think about. Other things to think about, other possibilities here. Why was it built originally? There are no hieroglyphics inside the Great Pyramid. Other pyramids have hieroglyphics inside them. This one does not. Leading to even more reason or speculation why it was built by an older civilization and rediscovered. When it was originally entered by the Arabs in 800 or so AD, there's no coffins or sarcophaguses or anything like that found. They found this one large box that did not have a lid and did not have any hieroglyphics on it. They thought it was, it was big. It's still there because it's too big to take it outside of the pyramid. The pyramid was built, or it was placed in that room, and the rest of the pyramid was built around it. There's no way to get that box outside of the pyramid today without deconstructing part of the pyramid or without deconstructing the box. What was that box for? Sure, it's plenty large for a person, maybe large enough for half a dozen people or more. Joe Smith forgets if there was a lid found for it or if there was no lid. But there's no other boxes found. Supposedly no hieroglyphics inside it at all. The only pyramid without hieroglyphics. It's the most accurately and precisely built pyramid. It was supposedly built as a tomb, but no mummies or bodies or anything like that was ever found. So, if the most sophisticated and biggest pyramid in all the world was built as a tomb to honor some king, why was he never buried in it? Or was it built for something else? Joe Smith thinks it was built for something else. Joe Smith don't think it was ever built as a tomb. Joe Smith even thinks it may have been built by an older civilization and then later rediscovered by the Egyptians who tried to copy it, but was never able to build it as precisely with all their other attempts. It was originally encased with a highly polished limestone. It was supposedly polished so precisely that it was almost mirror-like quality, reflecting the sunlight. It is also built not with 4 sides, but 8 sides. Each side is indented. Why is this? Well, Joe Smith was kind of thinking about it, and then Joe Smith was doing a little headlight restoration on one of his truck projects, and then Joe Smith noticed concaveness behind the headlights. Perhaps it was concave and 8-sided, so it could be used to reflect light. But why is this? Why would they need something to reflect the sunlight shining down on it in the middle of the day, in the middle of a desert? Well, maybe it wasn't built in the middle of the desert. Go back 13,000 years and take a look where it was built originally. This Nile, well, zoom in real small or real close, and there's the Nile River. And all this darker area is like the Nile River Valley or flood zone. Joe Smith thinks when it was originally built, water level in the Nile or the seas may have been higher. That this entire darker area, which now has towns in it and fields and farms, was the original Nile. And right here was the mouth of the Nile River 13 or 14 or 15,000 years ago. Which people speculate that the blocks of the pyramid were quarried elsewhere, or well, it's been proven they were quarried elsewhere, but they speculate that they were floated down the Nile. Well, current Nile is clear over here, so if you flow down the Nile and drag clear over there, that's a long way. But if the Nile River at the time was this wide instead just this, well then look, it was built right at the docks or the base, right at the edge of the Nile. Not just the edge of the Nile. The mouth of the Nile is down here. It's actually right where the mouth of the Nile and the Mediterranean Sea would meet 15,000 years ago. All this darker area here, that's 15,000 years of sediment and flooding, including the Great Flood, which stripped Egypt of its topsoil and washed it into the sea and the Nile River, and 15,000 years of sediment from the mountains of the Nile River flowing down all these dried up creek beds you can see here. From the mountains of Egypt and Sudan, and even from the forests of Central Africa, all that sediment being washed downstream the Nile River and out into the Mediterranean Sea to create all this artificial land. Just like if you look at the mouth of the Mississippi River Delta, New Orleans, is similar. All this new land created from sediment washed down the Mississippi River. Well, all this is 15,000 years of dirt and sediment from the great biblical flood, and 15,000 years of other rains and flooding and washing downstream from a good chunk of Africa to form all this new land. So originally, the Great Pyramid was actually built on the shores of the mouth of the Nile River where it meets the Mediterranean Sea. And also, if you read ancient texts and old literature, the Great Pyramid was referred to as Ikhet, I-K-H-E-T. Joe Smith may have pronounced that right, maybe not. But Ikhet. Ikhet translates to the great light or the glorious light. And also ancient text talks about how during the day it was just so bright to look at because of the sunlight reflecting off of it. Well, maybe at the same time at night it was used to reflect light. Maybe, well, the capstone, there's no capstone there today. And some wonder or speculate if there ever was a capstone. Maybe there never was a capstone. Maybe it was left like that on purpose. There's also like a pit or like kind of like a well drilled underneath it. Maybe they drilled deep enough to tap into natural gas or something, and were able to pipe the natural gas to the top of it, and that night lit it on fire, so it had a huge natural gas flame burning on top of it, which then the light from that flame reflected off the concave sides, which shine light to the community around it, including into the harbor, which 15,000 years ago or 10,000 years ago, this would have been the docks of a harbor right at the border between the Nile River and the Mediterranean Sea. So this would have been the Egyptian harbor right here. So that would have, light reflecting off this side would have lit up the harbor ships, and then light reflecting off the other sides would have lit up the community, especially with the reflective concave sides. And then as far as the height of the pyramid, if you do the math, and Joe Smith took some time to do some research and figure this out and found some information online. But if you take the height of the pyramid and you figure the angle of depreciation and the curvature of the earth, It's visible for about 63 or so miles. Kind of an odd number until you transfer it to kilometers. It comes out to be right at 100 kilometers. A round number, or even number. So, that means if you're traveling by land, you could see the flame on top of the pyramid from 100 kilometers away. If you're out here in the Mediterranean Sea, headed towards the mouth of the Nile, you could see the flame from 100 kilometers away. Like a lighthouse. Like the Pillars of Hercules was. Like the Colossus of Rhodes was. Like other ancient tall structures were, like Joe Smith hinted in the trailer preview. That's what the tallest structures of the ancient worlds were. Lighthouses. You guide people traveling by sea or walking by land because it's too hot to walk by land during the day, so many people traveled at night. Well, they needed guidance to travel by night. You heard the story of the three wise men following the star above Jerusalem or Nazareth or whatever it was. Maybe that star wasn't a star in the sky, but a flame on a tower above the town. Maybe many of the bigger cities of the time had flames on towers or pyramids or hilltops or something or other that burnt above the city at night that people refer to as stars. So when they're traveling by foot at night, they can look out to the horizon and see the faint light from this distant burning flame above the city. And then that light would also light up part of the city at night too, and give the city light as well, because there was no electricity at the time. So these lights, these flames above the city would provide dual purpose. Would have been guidance for travelers by land, walking at night, or sailing by sea at night. And it would have lit up the community around it and given them light at night. Egypt used to be a forested area, but during the Great Biblical Flood, a lot of that dirt, topsoil, was stripped away, washed away during the flood when the floodwaters receded, and washed away into the Nile and into the Mediterranean. And then plus another several thousand years after that of more sediment washing down the hilltops and from Central Africa, create all this new land. So Joe Smith thinks that the Great Pyramid may have been built by an even older Egyptian civilization than what people think, and that the newer ancient Egyptian civilization tried to copy it but was never able to get it as good, and maybe they never figured out what it was for either, because maybe land had changed so much by the time it was rediscovered. As Joe Smith thinks, the pyramid was originally a lighthouse that lit up the community around it with the concave sides and the polished limestone, lit up the harbor at the base of the Nile in the Mediterranean where the two of them met. Was a guide to people walking by night from 100 kilometers away, or sailing in from the Mediterranean Sea towards the mouth of the Nile from 100 kilometers away, which 100 kilometers would put you kind of out around here. So, if this was all water and this was shore, then yeah, that's quite a ways away. There's the Suez Canal. So, but it's said that the pyramid can even be seen from the hilltops of like Israel. So at night from the hilltops of Israel, you would be able to see the flame burning on top of the Great Pyramid, of the Great Pyramid Lighthouse. And that's how the Great Pyramid got the nickname Eket, the Great Light or Glorious Light. Because it was originally built by much older civilization, maybe more than 15,000 years old, prior to the ancient Egyptians that we know of. Prior to all this sea area becoming land. Prior to the great biblical flood. Prior to northern Africa becoming a desert. What's your thoughts, guys? Comment below. Joe Smith signing out.